Rolling.
You're rolling?
Well, I'm filming.
Do you remember, Clayton, that all-wheel drive GTI that we started like 700 years ago?
That sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar?
Yeah. Kind of lived on a hoist.
Yeah, lived on a hoist. I'm going to give a brief explanation of the car for new followers. Mark V GTI. Clayton can add in a little few clips, pictures, whatever, that we did. We started to do an all-wheel drive conversion on. It originally had an APR turbo kit, stage 3 kit that I had modified. We made around 450 wheel horsepower. While we had it to do the all-wheel drive conversion, the owner wanted to make a bunch more power, snowballing into building engine more, building a custom turbo kit, etc. That brings us to this video, which is we're finally getting some headway on the Mark V GTI. I see people, obviously watch YouTube videos, like everybody else.
No.
And I see people like YouTubers comment about, make sure you're not getting unsubscribed or you're not getting the notifications. I honestly thought it's BS. I thought it was just people like trying to convince people to subscribe. But I've literally had a handful of messages from people saying that they've been unsubscribed from our channel or they're not getting notifications anymore, even though they set up for it. So this is just me saying, if you're a subscriber, make sure you're subscribed. Or if you'd like to subscribe, join along in our party of Volkswagen builds.
This is a party?
Yeah, some days. Okay, where we left off in the last video of this, and there's a whole huge series on this car, and I would say...
There's what, like 9 videos or something?
I don't know how many there are,
Quite a
Clayton,
few.
but I would say that out of all the video content we do, everything on this car is probably more detailed than anything else. Would you agree?
I agree.
It's pretty long series.
The all-wheel drive stuff we captured a
Transmission, engine build, manifold, all that stuff. So where we left off with the last video was building the manifold, full tubular manifold. G900 Turbo's going on at this time. And with that video, I think we had it all tacked up and in place and on the engine. But in this video, we're starting to get into building and assembling the manifold. The first thing we did after we had it all tacked up is pulled it all apart and then started to weld up each runner separately. We didn't have any of the wastegate provisions or any of that stuff. And I know I had filmed some of this on the video, but I had filmed some of it in slow motion like an idiot. And some of that content got kind of lost. So here's a bunch of footage.
No, it didn't get lost. We have it. We're just not putting it out.
Right. But I meant the talking and the conversing, explaining what's going on. That got lost because there's no audio on the slow motion. So the first part of this is building the manifold. Again, taking everything up, back purging everything, milling the manifold flange on the mill. And then starting to put the engine in the car 300 million times and doing the wastegate fitment and all that stuff. Manifold itself, that is hours and hours and hours of welding and fitment to get the wastegate and everything fitted. And I think that probably brings us up to actually doing work on this where I didn't film a bunch of stuff in slow motion. So let's get to it. All right, the last clip I filmed, I'm an idiot, and I filmed it all in slow motion. So the engine is now in the car. I have a piece of 4-inch, just for test purposes, 4-inch piece of pipe in here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get away with 4-inch, but I definitely will be able to get away with 3.5-inch. So the manifold's in. I got to mock up the wastegate. The wastegate clearance is all good now, and see if you can see that. So we're going to pull the engine back out, pull the manifold off, and then I can start welding on the wastegate. But everything fits, everything's tight. I mean, everything, not tight. It's tight fit, but everything fits, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, engine back out. All right, after a bunch of messing around, I was able to utilize a bunch of lines, either from 2-liter turbo engines or other stuff I had piled away in my smash of parts and leftover stuff. So it's really convenient. Obviously, I have the proper restrictors and all that stuff. It's really convenient having all of these lines metal. It's a very tight fit to get this turbo on this engine. The only one that I have to modify or make myself is the return line, but everything fits, not just on here but on the engine. The turbo's been on and off like probably 10 times now, but I'll get it back on there and show you guys how it all fits lined up with all these lines. Everything into the block, oil, feed, coolant, all of that is going to be like factory. All right, and there's what it looks like with all the lines and everything on it. Nothing is tight yet. It's all just mock-up. Everything's gonna come in and out probably a couple more times, but we're very close now. The only thing I have to make is the oil drain line. The original oil drain line is back here. I don't know if you can see that. It's really dark, but it's right there. And that's kind of level with the turbo's a little bit higher than that, but it's kind of too close for me to create a proper drain for it. So we're just gonna loop down underneath the pan. So now we're gonna get it. Oh yeah, and I did all the wastegate stuff. I don't think I recorded any of that. But now it's time to get it back in the car, try to get a good idea how it all fits with the wastegate on it again and all the lines. And we'll get the turbo clocked properly, and then we're really to the point of starting to make the downpipe and the dump tube and all that. Like I said, none of this is tight right now, so. But one step closer. Okay, so I don't know where we left off with this all-wheel dry swap GTI, but as you can see, the downpipe is in here. This is a 3.5-inch downpipe. The turbo's a G900 for anyone that's new following along with this build. You can see kind of the lines. They're not, nothing's permanent right now. Everything's coming back out. I apologize if that's not in focus. Yeah. I was able to use a bunch of the OEM lines. I think the oil feed line I'll probably have to replace. Anyways, the point of this, the downpipe 3.5-inch is going to fit all nicely. Nothing hits. There's a good amount of space around everything. The only one line that I really got to worry about too much is the return line, which you can kind of see at the bottom here, which I haven't done yet. But that clears everything. So now, just to give you guys an idea of what goes on here, the engine's coming back out again, so I can do the dump tube into the downpipe, and that's going to be way easier to do with the engine out of the car. So I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but the only thing that's bolted in right now is the dry shaft with a couple bolts, the dog bone, and then the 2 mounts up top. So this engine will probably be back out of the car within the next 15-20 minutes. So it's definitely worth the effort than me trying to reach down and fabricate a piece to go from the wastegate, which you can see up there, into this pipe here. So we'll do all of that out of the car. I have everything marked, so let's get it back out. Okay, engine's back out, and we got the dump tube done. Well, not done, it's not welded up totally yet, but you get the idea now. So now we're gonna, before tacking this and drilling all this out, we're gonna put the engine back in the car again. Make sure everything fits around the cables and there's nothing that's interfering with this before committing 100%. So back in the car, put the downpipe and everything back on, check for clearance, and everything comes back out. I'll tack it up. We'll cut the hole in this pipe, tack it up, take it off, weld it. Then the engine goes back in for the final time. Yay! All right, engine's back in again. It's a little bit hard to see. Can you shine the light up there? Yeah. So you can see way up in there. Maybe, maybe not. But we have lots of clearance off everything. So now it's time to take this out. The cables run up in there, and they're not pulled out of the way yet. Those are just loose, so there'll be lots of clearance up in there. And it's time to take it back out, cut the hole in this, and then weld it all as one piece. And with the dry shaft moved out of the way, everything should fit back up in there nicely. So, last time the engine's coming back out, hopefully. Famous last words. We got the downpipe basically done. I still have to weld in the O2 bung for it, but the engine now is going back in, hopefully for the final time. We got all the lines mostly situated. The only major thing left, the downpipe's gonna come back off, and we'll do the O2 bung and then put that back up in place. And then I got the rest of this already figured out at the bottom. So the bottom part of the exhaust is going to be, let me flip the mic back around. The bottom part, most of the exhaust is going to be 3.5 inch to basically the cap back, and I think we're going to do some sort of open dump valve when we try to really make power on it, because obviously trying to run 600 plus horsepower through 2 mufflers that are going to be on the back of this thing isn't going to be ideal. So it's time now to get the engine back in for the final time and start getting the front end, rad support, all that stuff, and the new intercooler, which I'll talk about once we get there, all back in the car. The engine's finally back in. The front end's about to go on. That'll happen today. We have already switched out, and I think I mentioned this earlier in the video. I don't know if you'll see it, but likely not. This has a front mount intercooler on it, which would have been called a twintercooler originally, and it used the stock intercooler as well, so it literally had twin intercoolers. Well, we wanted to keep that. Instead of spending a bunch of money, we upgraded the direct fit intercooler, so that's a CTS intercooler coupled with the front mount, so we should have plenty of cooling capabilities with this intercooler setup now to handle the power that we're shooting for. Things are finally starting to get buttoned up now that the engine doesn't have to come out anymore. It looks obviously like a huge mess right now, but things are finally starting to come together with it. The downpipe will still need to go back in because I need to do the flex and stuff like that at the bottom and continue on the exhaust to the back part. And on this car, because it is an all-wheel drive converted car, we have put the Mark V R32 dual center exit exhaust on it. There's a lot to say, so I have to match up with that. You'll see that as we start putting that back together. But the front end's gonna go back on today, and hopefully the bumper, and it'll finally start looking like a car again. Clayton, can you believe it?
I can actually.
The engine's in.
Looks like a car.
There's still lots to do with it. The bumper's on. It's really dirty, but it definitely feels like we've made a lot of progress in the last couple of weeks on this thing. There's still tons of stuff to do, as I mentioned in the last video, but we're really getting close. The goals for this car, on top of it being an all-wheel drive converted car, we're trying to make 600 plus in it. And we built the transmission. Again, the whole series of this thing, I'll link it above if I haven't already. We have lots to do, but it feels really good. We're making good progress. And one thing I will mention, this is a Mark V. It is a TSI. It was a 2009. It was the first year for the TSI in North America. So not an FSI. So anybody that's following along that has a Mark 6, for example, this is exactly the same stuff. The engine's the same. You know, Clayton and I mentioned this in one of the other videos about people saying, oh, do a Jetta, or do this car, or do a Passat. If it has a 2-liter TSI in it, Gen 1, Gen 2, this whole build series is the same stuff. We're basically wrapped up. The car is on its wheels again. It is soon time to get into.
Speaking of which wheels,
he's
wants getting new wheels, right?
He wants to get new wheels, but can I just get the car running, please? So on that note, if you guys have any questions or comments about this build or any other build on our channel, be sure to ask them below. We have lots of cool stuff coming up. This 20th anniversary, we're about to tear heavily into this thing, making big power with this one. We have lots of cool Mark 7 content coming, and of course, drag car, everything else. See you next. I'm tired of talking. See you in the next video. Bye.